Hey students, welcome back. Happy Monday. Hope you had a nice weekend. I am really excited to kick off with you guys today and have on a different type of genre for this week with our costume designer, Maria Hooper. I'm just gonna do a couple of quick housekeeping things before we turn over to Maria. Want to go over a couple of odds and ends. If you guys have questions, as always, if they're urgent or immediate, something that needs immediate clarification on what we're discussing, please put it in the chat and I'll be following along and make sure to respond. But if you have a question for Maria that is related to your lecture prep questions or anything like that, please save it to the end and I will make sure that I give you guys lots of time to ask her whatever your heart desires. So I'm going to just share my my lecture slides. So I always have a problem with the way this uploads. I'm not sure why. I just wanted to review again for you guys fashion event critiques. These are due by October 12th, so you're kind of coming up on the deadline, about 3-4 weeks away. You need to attend 2 fashion-related exhibits in this semester, so they have to have been from August 29th forward. And given that we are now in a period where it's very difficult to get out and do that in person, if you have something that is online, remote, or a documentary that's not listed on this list that you want to include, please just note, and I'm sure it will work perfectly. The template for this is on the Blackboard under content. So if you just go under content, you'll be able to fill it out and submit it right there on the site. Has anyone had any questions arise as they started working on this?
I had a question.
Oh, sure, Catherine.
So last week, since it was Fashion Week and most of the, well, all of them were online.
Yeah.
If we watched some of those shows, could that count as one of
the? Yeah, absolutely. Just provide some sort of proof of how you watched it, but a screen print or something like that.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. Any other questions? Great. I want to go over in a little bit more detail about the lecture prep questions because they've been coming through a little funny. So if throughout the semester, before December 14th, you need to submit 2 different lecture prep questions. And that can be for any of the speakers that we have in. What is required, though, is that you fill out the template that's on Blackboard under content and send it before class at 4:10 p.m. the day of class. If I do not receive them, I will not accept them for that class. So they need to be into my inbox before 4:10. On that template, there's 4 questions that you can develop based on the specific speaker that week that you're particularly interested in. And I ask that you ask one of those questions during class and then write down the answer to that question and send it back to me as quickly after class as you can. Of course, if you're running off from here to somewhere else and you need to, type it up and send it a little later, that's fine, but make sure you send it by end of day. My request is that you then send it back on the exact same email chain, and it's the only thing in that email chain. So I don't want it sent to this question because I kind of check them in 2 different ways and it can get lost. Does anyone have questions about this? The last housekeeping thing that's kind of happening right now, I'm sorry, just a quick refresher on our attendance process. So as you know, I pull from our log here, so make sure your name is properly displayed. And at the end of class, send me an email to the attendance question that it is its own email. Do not reply on another chain that you've already written to me or with your lecture prep questions or anything else, because again, it can get lost in the shuffle if you do it that way. And I go back and look at these at the end of the semester as well, so I want to make sure that I have a very cohesive collection of what you're writing to me. And so then also, hopefully you saw my email this week about the one-to-one career advice signups. This is the Google Doc shared here. You should have gotten an email also specifically with a link, and I will upload this file to the shared drive after we're done talking today, so you can also just click through right here. I think we have the first couple of weeks filled up already, but if none of the times work specifically for you guys and you want to drop me a note to try to find another time, I'm happy to do it. It's optional, but I think it's a really great way for you guys to just talk about what you're looking for, and I can help kind of steer conversations towards who may be coming in And also, if you want me to take a look at your resume, I'm always happy to do that as well. I just request that you send it to me 24 hours in advance before we meet so that I have a little time to digest before we talk. And a couple more links to the social media. I see a few more of you guys are following along, but always a great resource for you guys to keep up with what is happening. And also look for extra credit opportunities and follow me once the semester's over in case you feel like coming back and seeing some more lectures. A refresher on our remote guidelines. Please raise your hand if you want to speak, and I'll call people in order. Type immediate pressing questions in the chat function. And if you're speaking, please turn on your camera as early as you can so that when I call on you, you can preemptively start speaking. And unmute only when you begin to speak. And just a reminder that classes are recorded and posted. Here is our schedule. So today we have Maria Hooper in, who's our costume designer in film, television, and theater. Later on in the semester, we are going to have another costume designer in who is actually more specifically to theater. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of see what the difference is between these two areas, as well as the difference in costume design versus fashion design. And next week we are off for Yom Kippur, so just make sure that you have note of that. We do not have class. But the following week we have Karen Sabagian, who is the designer and owner of her own company. And the following week we have a very seasoned industry veteran, Robert Bronstein, who is a former president of Leon Max and BCBG Max Cesaria. Tanya Galesic is joining us on 1019, who's the president of Jimmy Choo. So just to give you a bird's eye view of what we're doing in the next month or so you can prepare who you want to prepare questions for. So as you guys know, today we have in Maria Hooper for costume design, and she's going to go into a lot of specifics about what it means to be a costume designer. But I wanted to just frame out for you guys a couple of basic things to frame the discussion. In costume design versus fashion design, they're related but different for sure. I think that some of the specifics behind costume design is, that you're making things for one specific person only, and that it doesn't need to be tailored to fit the masses, or fit a specific price point, or be forgiving in its fit qualities, because it literally is going to be tailored for that person to tell their story throughout the movie or theater piece. Storytelling is obviously a very big component of what happens in costume design, and you want to make sure that everything that you're putting on a person is telling that story. And depending on the piece, historical accuracy is obviously a very big factor in what you're putting forth. You can say as a designer that you're making a 1970s inspired design collection, but that doesn't mean that it actually has to be completely historically accurate for that design collection. That said, if you're putting in a movie, if you don't do it quite right, you're going to get some judgments out there. In fashion design, I think some other things is just obviously the mass appeal that you need to have when you're designing a garment. I feel like I've had some students in before who say that that is not of their primary concern. They're kind of just making art, and they don't care who they're selling it to. And I think that is a difficult way to enter into the industry. No matter where you're designing, even if you're planning to sell one piece, like last week's Celestino Couture, who would make one piece for their client, you still need to be keeping in mind what's going to look good on them, how they're going to afford it, how it's going to all come together at the end of the day. So you kind of have to have that in mind in the appeal of being able to sell an item. And also, if you're working for a brand, or if you are your own brand, you're representative of a specific brand when you're designing any given item in fashion design. So you kind of have to stick within the same vein and the same category, and kind of stay true to what that brand looks like. Does anyone have any other obvious differences that they can think of for costume design versus fashion design? Feel free to use the chat if that's easier as well. Okay, great. Well, moving on. The design process for costume design, and I think Maria can dive into this a bit more, but a typical process would be starting with the analysis of a script, then working on collaboration, getting together with your director and other pertinent people within the film or the theater production, and talking about how each thing is being seen by the director. Then doing costume research around that, and doing some preliminary sketching and color layout to go into that scheme and that research that you've done. And then pulling together final sketches per each character. And then lastly is the sourcing, which can be, pulled from places, rented, shopped, or constructed. And I think this is a place where Maria can really talk about how she best does her sourcing. Does anyone have questions about this? You want to save them for Maria? That's great. Okay. Just some more.
I have a quick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry, I had a quick question. Are you gonna post this on Blackboard, this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. These are a couple more resources on costume design. So if today piques your interest, I know a few of you did say you were already interested in costume design before when the semester started. So that's great. But if you thought you never were interested in it before and today Maria piques your interest, these are some extra things I think are kind of cool to check out. In the 1950s, the Academy went through and described what each role is that makes up the different awards that they give out at the Academy Awards. So it's a bit dated back to the 50s, but it's a really interesting little piece where it describes the role of a costume designer. And then Oscar movies from 2012, there's kind of in-depth interviews with the designers there. And I think it's really interesting to hear kind of the artistic point of view of these famous designers. And just from a person in the industry, I found the film Very Ralph, which is a documentary on Ralph Lauren, as a great way to kind of think about how costume design can kind of carry into the fashion world. As you all know, I worked at Ralph Lauren for a number of years, and every single design that was put forth for the company and every single collection that was put forth always had a movie that said it. That was kind of the thing that inspired Ralph Lauren. And I think one of the things that's made him a very successful designer over the last 50 years. And he uses his inspiration or his theme of a movie, whether it be, kind of a Cold Mountain, I remember being one for one specific collection for the Lauren collection. So he used kind of this very beautiful white overlaying look to kind of carry all the pieces in the collection, and it all worked together to tell the story of this movie through clothing. And in his documentary, Very Ralph, which is on HBO, I think it's like a year old or so, he kind of goes into the specifics of how he uses film as his inspiration and character as his inspiration, which is not to say that every designer does this, but I think it is a really interesting way to think about how these kind of two worlds merge together. Does anyone have questions or any other suggestions they want to throw out to the class? Okay. So with that, I want to introduce you guys to Maria. And for some reason, my photography is not coming through. I don't know what happened to my PowerPoint. But Maria is a costume designer working in New York and Chicago. After nearly 10 years in the fashion industry as a women's knitwear designer, she transitioned her unique inventiveness into designing costumes for film, television, theater, and commercials. Recently, Maria costume designed for the Netflix comedy hit series It's Bruno, Emmy nominated for the 2019 Outstanding Short Form Comedy Series. Other design work includes Jordan Galan's feature film cult hit Ava's Possessions, a kaleidoscope romp through one woman's demonic haunting. Film festival favorites include Joel Cleese's Pike County, set in rural Kentucky, which explores the contemporary obstacles that threaten one family, and Justin Ambrosino's First Samurai in New York, which is a period drama set in 1890 that follows a young Japanese samurai immigrant as she navigates a fledgling New York City. And it won Best Costume Design Award in Las Vegas in 2018 and placement in the Fashion on Film Festival in Paris, France. Previously, Maria assisted costume designed season 2 of the Showtime hit series, The Chi. She has lent her talents to the costume departments of other television series, including HBO's The Plot Against America, Apple TV's Dickinson, ABC's The Family, and Empire on Fox, and the Terry George film The Promise. Commercial clients include TD Ameritrade, Citibank, Lean Cuisine, Xfinity, DirecTV, Mattel, Fisher-Price, and many more. A graduate of the Parsons School of Design, Maria is based in New York, divides her time with family and work in Chicago. So with that, I would love to turn you guys over to Maria. You there?
Hi.
Hi.
Can you see me?
Yes, there you are.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
It's going.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me again.
Yes,
So
I'm
good to see you all. So good to see faces. This is a new world on
Yes,
this Zoom
it
call. So,
is.
I'm quite happy to come and chat with you guys all today. I started in fashion design and then I transitioned into costume. So I think I have a really unique viewpoint in both worlds and how different they are, and the difference between your objectives in both. And I think right now, when everyone's still figuring out how they want to move forward, what they are interested in, it might be good to sort of explore the difference between both. I trust that you guys all are talking about fashion and how that, the pipeline, how that parlays in the world, what that is, clients, business, all of that. So I don't need to talk about that, but I'll just focus on costume design. When I worked at Banana Republic, it was really a wonderful experience. I really loved it. And it was sort of mainstream, and I really liked that. I liked, appealing to a customer that could approach anyone. And this was like the early 2000s, and the 90s market was very different than it is today. So Banana Republic had a little bit of a different audience and objective than it does now, but it was great. And but I just wanted to try something more expressive, more storytelling, more variety. And so I ended up doing little films here and there, and I ended up transitioning full time. And it took me a long time to really understand the difference and the focus of the work. So I taught a little bit at NYU, and so I'm going to share a little bit of some ways to think about costume design that I shared there. I'll share with you all. So let's see. This is, well, I have to get used to the. Let's see. Share. There we go. Great.
Perfect.
So this, is it showing?
Yep, perfect.
Great. So this is a beautiful piece by Alexander McQueen. I don't think I have to introduce this piece to you guys. I'm pretty sure you guys have all seen this. But this is an Alexander McQueen piece from really a long time ago. And this is what I really loved when I first got into fashion, this sort of couture fantasy, the idea of playing with shapes and playing with form and playing with new ideas. And focusing on shows like this and being able to really look at these inventive ideas and these inventive sort of pieces. And everyone, you can see in this fashion show, everyone is focused on this garment. This garment has been around the world. And everyone's focusing on the beauty of what this garment is and the message that it's saying on this woman. And that is what fashion is, right? It's about today. Now, actually, this dress was used in the Hunger Games, and it was used to tell a story here. And it was used in contrast with the sort of dust bowl of the districts. I'm going to assume you guys have seen this movie, but there are two sort of opposing worlds, right? There's sort of like the rich world that's a little ridiculous, who like has these games, and then there's the districts that are like full of poverty. They the costume designer drew a lot of inspiration from the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. These like really sad ginghams, really sad wilty rayons and cottons. All their clothes in the opening scene here are meant to be wilted. They're meant to be sweaty, and they're meant to be sort of relaxed and dingy. And I think this is a really good introduction as to what costume design really is. Do we care about Jennifer Lawrence's dress in this scene? Not really. She is the heroine of this movie, and her dress is meant to look sad. She needs to look like the underdog here, and she certainly does, next to our sort of ridiculous fantasy creature that is sort of hosting these events. You know, the contrast of those materials is really important, which leads into a lot of this, which is that in fashion, it's you know, you're speaking to a customer who has to wear something for herself or himself, and it's about what that person experienced with the clothes. In costume, it's about an audience looking at the group. And what does that mean there? You have to look at the entire group and how they all sit together. One person alone isn't going to tell you much, but one person standing next to other people will inform the audience about what the character is. So this is the Dust Bowl. One of my favorites, and I think one of all of our favorites, fashion films is Funny Face. This is Audrey Hepburn in Funny Face from the 1950s in this beautiful Givenchy red dress. This is stunning. It's gorgeous. And this is definitely a fashion film, and it really utilizes the color red to stand out. And the color red in film is often used as a standout piece. It's used on the heroine. It's used. This is Renee Zellweger as Judy Garland. This is a great piece based off an actual dress that she wore. You know, all the areas. This is actually Judy Garland. Red is really used to stand out. We have our, I mean, sultry heroine, Jessica Rabbit. It's meant to seduce. It's meant to exude sex. It's meant to sort of stand out and be a little awkward. This is, I mean, this is from Outlander. She's meant to sort of stand out. Everybody's looking at her saying, why are you wearing that crazy red dress? You know, and so these are the kinds of things we're all really attracted to when we think of costume design, is these like beautiful clothes and these beautiful pieces. It's certainly why I got into it. I'm going to show you, this is pieces from a movie called The Godfather, which I hope you've seen. If you haven't, it's a great film. And the costume design in this film is sort of stand out, is sort of like a classic piece of what we call a character arc. And that is when you tell a character story through clothes. Now, again, none of this is really spoken to the audience, and it's not written in the script. This is something the costume designer has to bring to the story. And in a lot of ways, what you bring to the story is how you even get the job in the first place. If you can offer some of this to your director, then you'll introduce him or her, hopefully, to some new ways of thinking about character, and you may get hired. So in the first scene of The Godfather, there's a family wedding, and everybody, and Michael Corleone, who's standing next to Kay, played by Diane Keaton. Kay is the girlfriend, and he has brought her to his wedding, his sister's wedding. So his family is all here. They're in really sort of soft, muted tones. And Kay is new to the family. She's sort of wearing this coral dress with the sun hat. She definitely stands out in this photo. But, you know, she's not in the family yet. We're introducing the audience through Kay to what this family is about. I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil some things if you haven't seen this movie. If you go on and you continue on, Michael ends up going to Italy, and he hangs out in the countryside, and there's a lot of like muted browns and olive tones. It's really sort of the Tuscan, Sicilian vineyards, and it's all those earthen browns. And he ends up marrying this girl, and you see this like beautiful soft wedding that he goes to, or that he, you know, has. And then in the next scene, you know, in this beautiful beigey tone, there's a very romantic scene with him and his new bride, and you have these sort of soft beiges. And then it immediately cuts back to this scene that you see down below with Kay back in America, sort of showing up at his house, wondering where he is because her boyfriend's gone. Turns out he went and married somebody else, but she'll never know that. And what the red in this scene is really meant to evoke is how out of the family she really is, and just how on the outskirts. She is not part of this family. She is not a part of Michael's story. She is just, you know, he in this scene, he is even sort of inviting her to leave. He just does not want her to show up at this house anymore. And that's what this vibrant shock of color, this is about really pushing this story that she and Michael just could not be more worlds apart. And then when we get to the end of the movie, eventually she does marry him. And the last shot of the movie is this scene of her in this beige dress, sort of blending into the curtains, and he shuts the door on her. And we see that her character has sort of descended into the sadness of this family, and she has lost her spark, she has lost her identity, and she's a little helpless in this world. And then the bottom two scenes you see here are the opening scene of The Godfather Part II, and well, not the opening scene, but it's early on in the movie, and they're having a fight, and she is dressed like the furniture, and that's on purpose. This movie is told through Michael's eyes. He is the main character. We're meant to be seeing his story. It's not about anybody else in the story. This is his story. And through his eyes, she is furniture. She is just not an important individual. He doesn't care about her wants or her needs or her feelings. They are not partners. She is just a property to him. And so the suit that is chosen to wear, and even the staging, you can see she's sort of blending into the brown curtain. All of this is incredibly intentional so that we feel this sadness in her, and we feel this sort of helplessness that she just is furniture to him. So that's a really, I mean, these are classic films, and they're really good at sort of showing the characters of these films and how all these fit together. The next group I'll show you this is just a group of ladies in red dresses. And this is an interesting photo because I got this photo from a young student who was working in fashion, and you know, each dress by itself could be beautiful, right? But you don't really understand, you know, they all kind of get lost in a sea of red dresses. So I think what's important here is that individually, any one of these dresses could sell off the rack and they're stunning. But if you were to take this as a group, they all kind of get lost in the shuffle, don't they? No one really particularly stands out. And then I'm going to show you just a little bit of an idea about the scenes at play here. So here we have a group of women. Pretend this isn't all the same woman. And then we have a group of women, gorgeous, sultry. I mean, what comes to your mind? Like beautiful, amazing, model. If we put this woman next to her, if we put this woman next to a group, our eye goes to that cute, adorable girl in the jeans, right? It's not so much about the red dress anymore. It is more about this cute girl over here, and we kind of want to know what her deal is. Like, we want to know what her story is. And that t-shirt could have come from anywhere. Probably could have come from, I don't know, American Eagle, Uniqlo, and her story, maybe she's a young assistant. I don't know. We could make up all kinds of stories here about her. And the women in red sort of tend to disappear. And what was once a really beautiful dress now is just sort of background. So let's try it again. What if this woman were here? Now this is a very different story. This woman is irritated, not just with her gestures, but this woman does not have any time for these blonde women's nonsense, right? I mean, she's dressed up, she's in black, she's going places. I think this is a very different story, but again, we can tell who our hero is, and it is not the women in red. It is this girl who you know, doesn't want to be there. Now we have a little boy. Sit with that for a second. This then now turns the scene really fun and playful. And we're wondering, this little boy is just like having a laugh, hanging out with all of these girls, maybe feeling a little silly. And I think it's key to note here that this scene just reads very different than either of the past two scenes. And it also kind of doesn't really matter the details of their clothes. All we get is the character and how they play together, right? And this is really fun. I don't know, maybe this boy's lost backstage somewhere, who knows. Now we have this little scene where this guy is with all these women and he just thinks it's hilarious. He thinks it's fun. Maybe he feels a little uncomfortable. Maybe he likes these girls. Maybe he doesn't. I mean, we could really read this scene in a lot of different ways. This could be, this guy could be a bit of a smarmy jerk, or he could just be an adorable older man who had wandered in out of nowhere. You know, the story's up to you. But again, I think this is about making sure that we understand how we're offsetting character here and what that really means as a group. So I'm going to show you my favorite contemporary costume design film. And I think this film is so smartly done. And this is Bridesmaids. This is from 10 years ago. I can't believe time has passed, but this is from 10 years ago. And I mean, it's a really long time ago, but I think this movie is really smartly done. And that's not because any of the clothes in this movie are particularly memorable, but it's just because it is really well done, because you have to design the entire group here. So I don't know if you've seen this movie. I hope you have. But on the end here, on the side, we have Kristen Wiig, who's in the blue beads, and she's the hero of this movie. Kristen Wiig could wear all kinds of amazing dresses, but the point of this movie is that her character is a bit lost. She's floundering. She lost her business. She lost her boyfriend. Her best friend, Lillian, who is Maya Rudolph here, is getting married, and she just feels just out of the cool girl circle. She just, at one point in the film, she says, everybody's off and getting married, and I'm just sitting here not doing anything. She is supposed to be a bit lost and a bit immature. And if you notice, her dress is the shortest hem out of all the hems. All the four other women, except for Melissa McCarthy, who's in pants, who's sort of the other offbeat character, but all the other four women are hemmed exactly at the knee, and Kristen Wiig's dress is a little shorter, and that's meant to be a little awkward. She's got the buttons, she's got the beads, it all just kind of sits a little off, and that's intentional. It's not about putting Kristen Wiig in like a beautiful dress. It is just about making us feel like she's just not fully a part of this group. She's trying, she has no money. We find out she gets paid $300 a week, and it's just, you know, it's tough for her. So, you know, Lillian is there. She's a bit softer. She's wearing a cardigan. She's sort of all in lavender. And then we go over to Rose McGowan, I think her name is. No, that's not right.
Rose Byrne.
Rose Byrne, thank you very much. And she's in the middle there, and she is the most like uptight of all the characters. She has all the designer clothes. She's really, and Lillian is hanging out with her all the time. So a key thing a lot of times you do is you dress friends the same to kind of like hit the message home that they're friends. So you might look out for that a little bit. And so she's definitely wearing the most designer clothes. And it's also really important to note here that of all the women in this group, the one in the middle, she just happens to be standing in the middle with a leopard collar. Like she has a bunch of boys. She's sort of like an older housewife. Of all of this, that was the dress that was made custom. That was the dress that was made specifically for this character. Everyone else is sort of shopped and styled and curated specifically for these characters. That purple one is the middle, and you're not meant to know that. It's just you need to make sure you hit every character and that they work as a group and that you're telling the story. So there's just a lot of layers to effective costume design. And I'm going to take you to sort of the end here. How do I move?
Yeah.
Can you do it?
No, for some reason I can't.
What's happening?
Oh, there we go. Good.
There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So in this scene, she's at Lillian's bridal shower, and she's wearing the red dress in the scene. Now, she's not supposed to be sultry in this scene at all. She's meant to be, again, really awkward and out of the group. She just feels really immature, really, she feels awkward internally, and as a group, everyone else is at a different place in their life, and she's still just, her dress is a little too short. It's a little too sultry for what's happening in this scene. Everyone else underneath, you can see, is in these sort of like blushy lavender palettes. She still just does not fit in the scene. And then, can we go forward? Is it going forward for you?
Went back, but for some reason before it went, so I'm just going to try to keep clicking and see what happens.
Okay, well, we only have a couple more here.
Okay.
But anyway, she ends up wearing
Now it is showing.
okay, great. She ends up
Losing her mind.
Is it 22? She
Yeah.
ends up having a bit of a meltdown in this scene, and the red really like amplifies her anger as she sort of like has this meltdown, and it's really contrasted really well, with these sort of like lush muted palette that the whole group is in as they watch in horror as she like tears down this bridal shower. Then we have the next one is a traditional James Cagney Cops and Robbers. So this is another really good costume design film, and this is one that I'm going to end on. But this is like your traditional gangster movie from film noir from a long time ago. And this really set up the idea, in the 40s, gangsters, Al Capone was a real thing, and gangsters wore a lot of dark suits with the fedora hats and chalk stripes, and it was all really sexy in a kind of gangster way. And these movies were really popular, and it really hit home this idea that gangsters were sort of dark and hid in the shadows. And then in the 80s, you had this really amazing movie. You guys probably have not seen this movie, but in 1987, this movie was the biggest deal. And this movie was called The Untouchables. And this movie was about Al Capone. And Al Capone was notoriously difficult to take down. And it's a true story that eventually the federal government took him down for tax evasion. Now, it was kind of a bogus rap, but it was just a technical way to try to take him out of commission because he was really running Chicago. He sort of had his fingers in everything. And now because we're watching this movie in the future, we know that Al Capone is gonna come down, right, at the end of the movie. And they really needed to send a message that he was truly untouchable, that there was just no way anybody was going to get this guy. He had so much power. And the way they did that is by dressing everybody in white. Very clean, very light. Now, that is not the traditional gangster idea. You would never, if I had told you to dress a gangster in a white suit, I think you would think I was crazy. But they put everybody in these light tones, these creams. You can see at this bottom picture here, he's wearing a lot of like fur, and that's meant to evoke all the money that they have, how much power they have. They're literally clean, which symbolizes their cleanliness through that nothing sticks to him, that on the books there's no proof that he did anything wrong. And then eventually he is, you can see in this courtroom scene, he's the lightest one in the room, which just amplifies his power. And all of the shots are actually sort of this pyramid shape so that it makes it clear. It's either upstairs, so we feel like literally that he's on top. Or you have this kind of pyramid shape to show what a dominant figure he is. And then the cops down here at the bottom are this sort of like ragtag group of ruffians. They're not in uniform. They're all just kind of like mix and match browns. They have the dark colors. And that is meant to really show how they were the underdogs. And this is a movie about the underdogs. Even though you know, they are technically the official arm of the law. They have no power in this situation at all. So that is just a little bit of, you know, and I go through all of those stories, and we didn't really focus on the cut or the actual items of anything, because what's really important is the structure of the story that you're trying to convey and how the scenes play out. You know, if you have a wealthy person and a homeless person who need to play together, the homeless person deserves as much attention from you as your, you know, well-dressed star. Those two people have to sit in a scene together and really play off each other, and you are dressing both of them. You're doing the cops, you're doing the garbage man, you are doing the lowly assistant. Anyone who walks on screen, you are taking care of, and they all have to sit together in a really wonderful way. And that's what's really fun about it. And then on top of that, which I didn't even get into, but you add on top of that, you have, you know, historical research, anthropology, you know, social stories, that, you know, I think a lot of the conversation that we're having right now about the images in media that portray ideas of people, I think this is a really good introduction into what costume designers have always done, but there's been no groundwork to have a conversation about it in a wide way, and I think this is a really great sort of sampling of what we do. So this last picture, you know, I think I'm just ending on this, like, fashion versus costume. The top one is a beautiful design studio, and, you know, when I was a fashion designer, I would go into my office every day and we'd talk about shirts, and then we'd have meetings about that, and we'd all come together, and the whole goal was to sell clothes. And now on a film, I'm on set every day and no one wants to talk about clothes. It is just not the point of being on set. It's really fun and they care about your work, but on the shoot day, your job is just one of 12 departments, and you are fighting for funds between all of those 12 departments. And the camera department is the most important department, and you are making a film. You're not making clothes, you're making a film or a story or a play or an opera or what have you. So that is that, you know, that's the change up of the focus, and I think that, like, if you're thinking about fashion versus costume, it's a big difference on how you spend your time, is thinking about the final product that you're making. As much as we all love to look at fashion on film, there's only really a small forum where that comes out. But it's really fun, and you get to do all kinds of different things. So so as a little bit of an idea, I don't know if that
That was wonderful. Yeah, it was great. I think it really sets the stage for the importance of the role and how much it can play into the overall success of a piece.
There's so many films, if you have a trained eye, that you can see and they're bad, and people watch them, and costume designers, we all know it's because the costume design was terrible, but your average person doesn't know that. They might say, oh, I don't know, Tom Cruise was weird in that movie, or,
Yeah.
you know, or I don't know, I just don't like Eva Longoria, or whatever it is, and truly it's just because the costume design was off. But if you don't have that trained eye, you might not know that. Sometimes they're just terrible. I don't know. But
yeah. Well, I love that. That was great. And hopefully it gave everyone kind of a bird's eye view of what you do. I want to talk a little bit more about you specifically and kind of how you got here and advice you may have. So you, as we mentioned, you were working in, at the Banana Republic and the Knitwear team, and then you made your leap over to costume design. Can you tell us a little bit about how you made that leap, how you got that first job over in your new world?
well, I went to Parsons and I graduated, and it took me about a year, honestly, before I got my job at Banana. I would say maybe nine or 10 months. And within that time, I did a lot of different things. And I was a receptionist at Patrick McMullen's, who was like a nightlife photographer. I did all kinds of things. And I met a woman who was a costume designer on a film, and she needed a costumer, and it was an indie film. And I said, that sounds really fun. I'll do that. And so I worked on this film for a month, and I was on set, and I had no idea what I was doing. I messed up costumes left and right. I had no clue what I was doing, but it was really fun, and I really liked the energy of it. I met my ex-boyfriend on that film, and we were together for a really long time, and he was working in he went on to work in TV, and I eventually I worked on a home improvement show. This is like years ago, so I would like build furniture behind the scenes. And even though I wasn't doing costume design on that, it was just fun to watch how TV was made and the process and the stage. Technically, I was the art department, but it was really fun to watch how all of that is put together. And I just learned a lot more about it. And then I was also applying to fashion design jobs, but I remember when I started working at Banana, I was like, it's really fun. I'm really sad to leave this TV thing, but that's not, why I'm here. I'm here to go do fashion, and I loved that. But I don't know how, like 5 years into being a fashion designer, I kind of met a friend who was doing little, who was, a friend of a friend of a friend was doing like a short film, and I was like, oh, I'll help you. It was really fun being on a film. And then I did a couple more, and I did a couple more, and then it just started to grow. And then I just realized I sort of was at a point in fashion where I thought, maybe I'll just do this. And I worked for a couple other companies in fashion design, doing little films here and there, and then eventually I took the leap.
Yeah,
I
great.
took the veil.
Yeah, that's great. And then you went back to get your MFA at Yale, and would love to hear a little bit about that. Why you decided to do it, and if you found that experience to be worthwhile in the long run.
I did it because I wanted to have, I don't know why. I think I wanted to have some sort of like official education in it, even though you don't really need it. I found some aspects of it really worthwhile, and some aspects of it weren't. There are so many amazing people that I met, people who are working actors today, people who are pretty famous now. And it was really, I look back on it, and at the time I just didn't even think anything of it, but we just made little theater pieces together, and really played around with ideas. And it's so fun to watch everybody, just really dive in. There was a lot about it at the time. Now all the teachers have changed, but at the time I was there, there was some faculty that were at the end of their tenure. And so there was some aspects of it that, weren't the best. And New Haven is not the funnest place to live. But having said that, I learned a lot. I really liked having a bit of a classical education. I think going to graduate school, though, if anyone's ever thinking about it, it's particular to you and if you like it. You don't necessarily need it. I think having some hands-on experience is great. If you want to do more theater, a graduate program is an excellent place. A lot of people who go to a graduate program eventually go on to do TV and film. Especially now, theater is on pause indefinitely. So it's a very personal choice. It's personal to you. There's no concrete answer.
Yeah. What did the program look like? Like, how long was it, and how are the?
It's 3 years, and at Yale you study everything. So we studied set design, lighting design, projection design, and costume design.
Wow.
And you are in a group of a small class with set designers, costume designers, lighting, and projection, and you all take each other's classes. And even though you have a focus, you do all of it. So every weekend I was making models and designing sets, and I had to draft light plots, and I did a lot of video projection assignments. And so we do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's 3 years. We study that, and then you go on in your second and third year, and you're still studying it, but you are able to do a lot of like practical, actual theatrical shows.
Okay, cool. And what does an entry-level job look like in your world? Like, what's that first job that people typically get out of a program or out of undergrad if they know they want to go this direction?
That's a good question. I think there's two routes you can go. You can start assisting other designers. Which is really important to do, and people do all kinds of different things, because when you're working on a show, you work on it for a few months and then you do a different show. So people tend to really jump around their roles on each different show. I think out of the bag, if you're doing theater, you can assist, and you can work for other designers and really like learn the process of that. If you're in film, you should start as a PA, and then you move to coordinator, and then you move to shopper, and then you move to an assistant, and then you're a designer. So you can start out, I didn't happen to start out as a PA out of graduate school. I ended up doing a lot of shopping because I was a little bit older when I left. But I have to say, I really wish I was a coordinator, because a coordinator is sort of like the office manager, and you learn a lot about budgeting, you learn a lot about paperwork, you learn a lot about sourcing, and it's really important to hit all the roles. Actually, last night, another fellow designer and I sort of wished we had worked as a coordinator. Those like smaller roles are really important to learn like the bones, because if you jump too far up and you don't know it, it's your head on the line.
Yeah.
So it's really important not to go too far too fast.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then elephant in the room, obviously COVID had a major impact on this year. You just kind of referenced theater getting completely shut down, but how has it impacted you and the projects you've been working on this year? Or actually, start by telling us the project you were working on and kind of
right now I'm working on the television show Simply Halston. It's a Ryan Murphy show for Netflix that will be out next year. It's a 5-part miniseries. I'm one of the assistant costume designers on it, and it's really fun. The costume designer is Jeriana San Juan, and who's a FIT alum, and it's huge. It's huge. There's a sort of section that I manage, and because we have to kind of break it out because it's so big. And in March, one day they just said, pencils down, go home. And I'm not going to tell you my like sad story, but my cup is still on my desk. I don't know if I like left tea in it. The plants have all died. At first they just said 2 weeks, we're going to take a break. We all thought it was weird. And then months go by, and I'm going back next week. So
super exciting.
Yeah, very fun. We're really excited to finish it. We've shot 1 episode and a little bit of episode 2. So we just have, 3.5 episodes left to go. But it's beautiful, you guys. It looks so pretty.
Great.
Really nice.
I mean, from all roles in a film, I would think you guys actually could kind of get some things buttoned up in this time away from togetherness, or was it impossible for you to get work done remotely?
You have to be in a room together.
Yeah.
It's really hard. You have to have fittings. You have to work together. You have to shop. Even if you can't shop, if you are shopping online, which isn't really possible when you're doing a period piece, there's a little bit of online shopping, but there's no one in the office to receive packages. And you also have to turn over your credit cards through paperwork every week. And that's really, that means that somebody's doing that and if that person's not getting hired to do that, then you don't have money to shop. You have to be like together to do it.
Yeah. Well, since you just touched on that, tell us a little bit about where you do your shopping and how you do your shopping for your work.
It is a grab bag. So I'll use this one as an example, but it's really a grab bag. We rent from costume houses, the period clothes. We will build specifically we'll make the principal costumes, and then a lot of the rentals come through in the background. So, if you have your principal actor and they're standing in a room with 50 people, the 50 people are kind of rental or they're vintage shopped. We have shoppers that are out we have a person who's in charge of rentals and a person who's in charge of shopping, a person who's in charge of builds. So there's people who are making stuff, buying stuff, pulling stuff. We vintage shop. The longer you go in this business, you're sort of collecting resources. So you call your favorite vintage places and you say, send me anything 70s, you know, kind of like that. So it really is, it is a mix and it's constant.
I actually just heard today about different, I'm not sure how many of these exist, but different places that kind of carry excess goods from a certain time period. So like the 1970s, like there's like this huge warehouse that holds all these excess goods that never even were worn or used by anyone, and
Yeah.
them housed together, and you can go in and shop from there. And
yeah, I mean, we pull from everywhere. There's so many. So I'm sure there's like a place that's similar to that in New Jersey called Udelco that we shop at a lot. So yeah, it's everything and everyone for sure.
it's a good thing to know for us retailers on places to you can
Yeah.
put all your goods away to be a representation of 2020.
Yeah.
There's certainly
Oh, it's really hard not to be a hoarder, I have to say, because that's it. Because stuff, you know, next thing you know, you're like, oh, I'm gonna do that 90s movie, and I'm gonna wish I had these like Steve Madden foamy, you know, sandals.
Yeah, that's so funny. Well, and Halston is probably particularly challenging because I know when the company was sort of dissolved, they just got rid of
it. Yeah, and we're gonna address that in the script. It's addressed a little bit, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
That, you know, the clothes were sort of spread out, but we actually got Halston's actual tailor, who was the head tailor in his studio, and he came into the fitting with our lead actor and like met him and helped. And our lead actor has been in our sort of tailor. We have a tailor section of our department, and he's been in there like learning how to drape, learning how to stitch. So he's been doing it from the beginning. But yeah, like really resourcing as much of like the real stuff as possible. But at the end of the day, we have to meet the demands of production. And that means doing things 100 times. That means possible spilling. That means possible, you know, if you're putting something on a stunt actor, the actual authentic items cost a lot of money, and that means that they're insured for a lot of money. So we can't actually wear the real thing on screen, but we do copy them. And so we have like a whole rack of copies that have been made just to meet the demands of production, so nothing gets ruined, and clothes get ruined all the time.
Yeah.
They spill, they trip, they like rip a knee. I mean, so.
Yeah. That's a question actually Sharon's asking in the chat is how many of them are you recreating and how many are you altering originals?
A lot. I mean, we are recreating a lot of stuff. And that's like one of the sort of challenges of being a costume designer. There's a lot of fashion shows that actually happened that we're showing in the film. But the fashion shows are, you know, where you would have 15 looks. We just have to choose to shoot 3 of them. And so you just have to choose to shoot 3. So our costume designer did a really good job of synthesizing all 15 looks down into 3 designs. And so I think she sort of, instead of picking 3 of the 15 to copy, she sort of like made sure 3 of them like really spoke to the whole collection. So there's a few little tweaks here and there, but what it does is really showcase what his thought process was. So sometimes you have to make little choices like that.
Yeah.
But it was, but we have, I think 1, 2, 3, there's this whole, it's called the Battle of Versailles. It was like American designers versus French designers in the 70s. And there was like this big competition that really opened up the American fashion market. And so we're doing all of that in the next episode.
Wow.
During COVID, which is going to be nuts. So now I have to have fittings with the full shield, with the PPE. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Like a doctor on set.
That's right.
Well, everyone's a doctor, I guess. Everyone's dressed that way. You know, one of the themes that I'm talking about this semester is because of COVID, I feel like a lot has come to light that maybe fashion doesn't have to be so centered in New York City.
Mhm.
And particularly in your industry, I'm sure a lot of it is not centered in New York City, whether it be LA, Vancouver, Atlanta, a lot of these different cities that people shoot in. Just wondering if you yourself have worked in different cities and kind of anything you tell us about the personalities of where you've worked.
No, that's a really great question because it is very different. It is very different. I've done a couple of small jobs in LA. I did 2 or 3 TV shows. I did 3 TV shows in Chicago. Atlanta is booming. I've never worked there, but it is huge production wise right now. Actually, I would say 3-4 years ago, New York beat LA for the number of productions.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot, but working here is just harder. It's harder on the body. People don't have cars. If you go into this profession and you work in New York, you will spend the rest of your life carrying bags. That is just the truth. There's no way around it. Everybody has like back problems and hip problems. It takes, coordinating cars, coordinating all of the shopping. It's very hard on the body. And that's just like the one big, like, dong of terror I'm going to ring for you guys. But LA is, but the good thing about working in New York is everybody's a lot friendlier, actually. Everyone's really fun. You learn a lot. You're around each other. In LA, it's a little bit easier production wise because you have all these facilities that are already set up to shoot. But there's this whole hierarchy system that is really important. I worked with a bunch of people from LA here, and I was sort of shocked because, like, if somebody is your line and above you, you're not allowed to look them in the eye or even say hello to them. And in New York, it's just not like that. Like, you make friends with everybody because you have to. You have to just talk to everybody. The executive producer has to go meet the PA outside because somebody is holding the car. You know how the city works. Like, it's just everyone just making it happen. Vancouver is really relaxed, but it takes 2 weeks to get what one day would get done in New York. I did one movie, The Promise. Say it again.
Why do you say that? Like, why do you think things take longer? Is it the Canadian?
I think it's just not New York. I mean, to be honest, like, everybody is like has this kind of like energy in New York of like, all right, let's go already. And in Vancouver, everyone's like, what do you mean the packages are held up? All right, I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But it's a beautiful city. I did The Promise, Terry George's The Promise. I worked on up in Vancouver. We were doing reshoots up there, and it's a beautiful city. They had lovely food, but anything I wanted to do, there was just no sense of urgency. Chicago is a great city. I really like it, and it's really creative, but there's just not a whole lot of crew. So if you wanted to break in and get experience, that's a great city to do it, because on any crew I've worked on, half of the people don't have experience. So it's a really great place, but half of the people don't have experience.
Yeah.
So when you're, it can play to both.
You're working with. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and your recommendation would be, I mean, for the most part, people pick a lane. They pick a city that their home base is. Obviously, your home base is New York, but it's kind of unwieldy to imagine that you'd be hopping all over the country for different projects.
Some people do it. Some people definitely do it. It depends on the people that you get to know and you get to work with. If a director I know and love and have worked with said, I'm doing a movie in Kansas, come with me, I would say yes.
Yeah.
People shoot all over the place. But yeah, you're kind of based somewhere, and it's kind of because your career is sort of based on it's a little bit on who you know. Like, people call you, they want to, if somebody likes working with you, they'll call you again. So if you're in a city, naturally those people are here and keep calling you. But it's not unheard of to go other places.
Yeah. Great. I want to make sure I'm saving time for everyone else, and I still have tons of questions. So let me just see, what do you feel like are some important qualities someone should possess to be a strong costume designer?
You have to have people skills. You have to. There's no way around it. I will be very straightforward in saying that I'm more of an introvert. I've always been a little bit more like, I just want to draw a picture. I like, there may be a few of you that resonate with that, where you're like, you want to make a thing, you want to make art, like I'm just here making my art. But it's really, at the end of the day, like you need to connect to people. You have to win over your actor. They need to trust you. They need to like what you have to say. And also you have to win over your director. They have to like what you have to say. And it's a fine balance in any moment between selling an idea and like receding into the back, and no one should see you or hear from you. Like you should be invisible sometimes. And, you know, there's a really, you know, you're a bit of a psychologist, and you really, I would say more than a bit. There was a really good tip that Ariane Phillips, who has been Madonna's stylist for years, and she's a fantastic costume designer. She purposely won't go to set on hot days because all the actors will try to get her to say, I don't think my character wants this coat in this scene, you know, and it's like maybe it should be winter.
Yeah.
And like at the scene just before, they're wearing the coat, and it's like, no, you have to keep your coat on because this is the same scene. Like you have to, you know, and she's like, I won't go because they'll try to talk me into taking off their jacket, and if I'm not there, they're not allowed. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of, you know, that's just a small example, but like there's a lot of like playing, you know, figuring out the dynamics of how to get what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So people skills is number one.
Well, not to mention everything that you kind of mentioned in your presentation, but you kind of need to understand people to dress people, because you're trying to
Right.
show their personality there too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's, you know, and it's also about like going against that. Some actors are really game to switch it up, and some actors, you know, you have to know when an actor, it's not the right idea, and when an actor just like is so addicted to their cleavage that she doesn't want to let it go. And you're like, no, she's a nun, like we don't need to see her, this is not the cleavage nun. But like, you know, sometimes people just get really attached to what they think looks good on them, and sometimes you have to give it to them, and sometimes you can work with it, and sometimes you really have to try to like make them go the other way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sustainability is kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and also something that I like to run throughout the course. Where do costume designers usually go after you're finished with them? You know, do they get a second life?
well, if they're rented, when they go back to the rental house, so there's this whole culture. I actually just did a commercial, and we rented the costumes from Hail Caesar. So like the big like armor, there was like a whole Roman situation. There's big costume warehouses. There's not a lot in New York, but they're all in LA. And so once you have a costume that you've made, it belongs to the production, and they can sell it, or they can sell it to rental houses. Sometimes it goes on, you know, depending on how much of a hit the movie is, it'll like go to a museum or something, you know, exhibition. But yeah, they kind of get spread all over. It's not unheard of. Debbie Reynolds for decades saved costumes and made it her life's mission to buy important costumes, and it was her life's mission to sort of like make a museum, and it just she never can get it to happen. It was like one of her biggest devastations, and she finally had to sell everything away, and almost everything that she'd collected over her lifetime has now just kind of disappeared. So you know, really famous costumes, but they have all just kind of gone. So it's a little heartbreaking sometimes, but most of the time we get to reuse it.
Yeah, great. I will just ask one more question, then I'll turn it over to the students. My question is, what is your biggest piece of advice to a student who is looking to become a costume designer?
Biggest piece of advice. I mean, I have like, I could go on and on and on. I think I would say start with start with the small jobs. Observe as much as you can. It's okay to be a PA. It's okay to just help. It's okay to just be some of those jobs that are smaller. When you're a costume designer on a film, you're the only one doing your job. You're the only one doing your job. And so you need to sort of deliver. When you're a fashion designer working with other fashion designers at a brand, you can all sort of talk about the work. But when you're on a film, you're the only one who's needs to do what you have to do. So, you can't learn enough. I would say start small, start as a PA, start as a coordinator, just learn as much as you can.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful. Students, please raise your hand if you have any questions, and I'll call on you guys in order. Muriel, you're the first person I have.
Hi. Thank
Hi.
you for talking to us today. I'm interested about, you mentioned the tailoring department. And is that like something that you would start out being a PA for, or is there a way that you can jump into the tailoring department if you're just like a fashion designer who's interested in tailoring for
That's a
production?
great question. Every position on a film is sort of relegated by the union. So to be a tailor, you have to sort of be in the tailors union, which is sort of part of in New York, there's a costume union and a wardrobe union. The tailors fall under the wardrobe union. I think though that if you met enough people, you could PA. I mean, you could start out just PAing, meet the tailors, tell them you're interested, and they would sort of have a little bit of work for you on the sides, and then eventually you would build up to working a lot, probably.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alyssa, I have you next.
Okay. Hi. I was just curious if you prefer working on film or television or commercials, or, if you just have a preference and if there's a difference between working on any of them and just any thing like that, I guess.
Yeah. I would say when it comes to film and television in today's market, there's not much difference because TV has just blown up. I mean, with streaming now, there's so many avenues, and a lot of the creative stuff you're doing is like what film used to be. So I would say TV and film are more closely related. A commercial is a totally different animal. And I did a lot of commercials, and it was great for me because I'll just be honest, the money you make on a commercial is almost double the money you'll make on a film or a television. But the commercial is like a week long. Whereas, I'm talking about a day rate. Your commercial is a week long, so you're making a lot of money, but on a film, you're working for 3 months at a time. So it's sort of, in the long run, it's not the same, but it depends. Like there are people who just are commercial stylists and that's what they do. And it's super fun. I have a lot of friends who are commercial stylists and they're doing a commercial every week. So it just depends on like which world is your world. People cross over all the time, but a commercial, the point is the client. So let's say I'm going to make up something, plant company. If plant company has hired a production company to do a commercial, then you have to be on your best game and present everything as great as possible and do everything to cater to that plant company like your life depends on it. So you're working, I would say, 18-hour days on a commercial. On a film or television, it can be a little bit lower. Now, again, a commercial could be 3 days long. So I could just, work 18 hours for 3 days and then I have the next 2 days off and it's fine. But the demands are higher on a commercial, but they're shorter. But they can be very creative. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Catherine Worthman, I have you next.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just curious about how you get inspired for a movie or commercial or project and where you start. Like, do you do research, and especially if it's a period piece, like, do you read the script first and then kind of build your characters that way?
Yeah. Also, thank you for having your video on. It was very nice to have a little face. Yes, I will say because we all have been working costume designers forever. The thing that you will notice about any production designer or costume designer is that they all have, I'm not showing it to you now, but they have an endless amount of books. Everybody has their own at-home library that it covers every period of history. My friends and I have been researching 2020, and we each now have our own research binder of 2020, so that You know, we've been pulling like the New York Times, and when we see interesting people on the street, we're always like, okay, look at that guy with his mask. And we're researching it. We're a bit like anthropologists, and we like are swapping research because somebody's going to do 2020 the movie at some point, and we're going to be ready with all of our research. And you know, it's everything from like Dr. Banks's scarf game to like, you know, guy on the corner who refuses to wear a mask, you know, like all of it. You need all of that, you know. New York Magazine did a really good piece where they showed all those like medical doctors, you know, like all the working healthcare professionals. And they also did a really good piece of postal workers, head to toe shots of postal workers and how they like, you know, some are a little more slovenly, some are a little put together, and what all those people look like. So you're always doing research, first of all. And we just have libraries. It's a little bit, again, you know, and we have digital too, but you have to have it in person. So you start there because you already have it. You're already well versed in what all this research is. And then when you get a script, you read it and you understand what it is. And then you dive into the research that you have and you collect more. And usually the way the process works is you get a script and a director says, here's the script, you know, can I schedule an interview with you in 3 days? And in those 3 days, you have to put together mood boards and a sort of first off presentation. Now, it's not like interior design. It's not like the kind of thing where you're presenting it and you say, this is my final idea, because you need to be able to work with the director, and it all changes as you go. Once it's cast, you know, you could be thinking that your lead actor is Tom Cruise, and then all of a sudden they cast like, I don't know, a 400-pound man, you know, and you're like, well, this changes the story a little bit. What does this mean? So your story is always evolving, but the way you get the job is you have that research in your back pocket, you put together a presentation, and you talk to the director about what your initial impulses are, what your ideas are, and then they may like it or they may not, and then they hire you, and then you go off and you start researching and resourcing. And the key thing is to never pitch an idea you know you can't do. So if you pitched an idea that is like millions of dollars and they say, great, your budget is 500, you will be a failure at the end of that job. So there's a little bit of that game also.
And a lot of what you do also is working within that budget and kind of understanding, you know, what to give and take to make it all work.
Exactly. I mean, that is a huge part of the game. I will say when I designed, you know, even, you know, I don't want to speak too much about Halston, but we could have had more money. We could have had more money. You know, when I did Bruno on Netflix, my budget for the whole series, every episode was $9,000. Every person's outfit. There's 36 characters. I mean, shoes alone, let's say $75. I mean, you're talking $1,000 an episode. And then on top of that, I also have to pay for supplies and, you know, all of that. So we made it work, but you stretching that dollar is important.
Yeah. Thanks.
So
Yeah,
that's
thank
the
you so
process in
much.
a nutshell. Yeah.
Claire, I have you up next.
Hi. Just curious, in your experience, are there certain kinds of movies or TV shows that are more difficult to design for and source and research than others?
You know, I have to be honest. Two things are the trickiest. When there's one person, and sometimes like if you're in theater, this happens a lot. You have like a one-man show, or if it's like the movie where the whole movie is like watching four people in a room. That's actually very difficult because you're just looking at that outfit, and eventually people start to question it. It could be the right thing, but if they're staring at it, all of a sudden everybody's like, is that white t-shirt really what we want to say? And you really have to know how to defend your ideas and know how to back up your work. So it's just hard when, if all of a sudden you have 100 people, everybody's like, yeah, that group looks great. Okay, anyway, no one's looking at one thing. So that can be tricky. And also anything contemporary is really tricky. Anything that's set in today is really tricky because everybody has an opinion. You can like it, your director can like it, your actor can like it, and all of a sudden you have an executive producer who's flown in shoot day one, and they're like, oh, my ex-girlfriend wore that, I don't like it, and you got to take it off and change it. The grip could just make an innocuous comment and just be like, I don't know, I don't like that color. And then next thing you know, the actress is like, maybe this color is terrible. The grip said he didn't like this color. And it can be a little tricky doing contemporary because everyone has an idea of what clothes are right now. And it's all valid, but you have to sort of work with all of that. When you're doing historical, anything historical, you put somebody in an oldie-timey dress, everybody's like, yeah, I buy it, sure. I don't know anything about oldie-timey clothes. You do. You're the costume designer. So you can kind of like be a little bit more playful with period clothes as opposed to contemporary.
Oh wow, I thought like contemporary would be like really easy to do.
You think, and I totally get that. And from a standpoint of like going to the store and buying it, it is. From that standpoint, it is. But then you have to have a lot of conversations about it. Like, why out of all of the stores in New York did you go to that store and buy that top? And then people think it's really easy to switch. Whereas if you're wearing something period, everyone, I think, can accept the work that goes into it. And so they respect it a little bit more. And across the board, there's not a single costume designer you'll talk to that won't tell you the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I was curious, like, you ever like done anything kind of like any otherworldly costumes, like something sci-fi or fantasy, something that's like not contemporary or period?
No, but it would be really fun. I would love to. I haven't though.
All right, yeah.
That would be really fun. I did do like a couple of vampire-y things, but it was more period and less sci-fi, even though it had those otherworldly elements. But yeah, it's very fun. It's really fun. I hope to one day.
Great. Up next, I have Kylie. Thank you, Claire.
Hi.
Hi.
So I kind of have two questions actually. So I'm actually wanting to go into costume design as well.
Great.
But I really enjoy sewing and being able to do like that aspect of fashion design. So do you get to draw and design and sew your costumes, or are you primarily just buying pieces?
You know what? I just remembered something for the person before who talked about tailoring. I just remembered another thing. There are costume shops in New York City that are not attached to a show. There are costume shops that just do the builds. John Christensen, Bethany Joy, Colin Jones, Mio Gobernick. There's a lot of costume shops. So like if there was a way you wanted to get into tailoring, I would say like research those costume shops as well. That has nothing to do with the unions, and you can go that route too. So I just had that thought, and I wanted to say that. With regards to your question, I will say what's really funny is that when I was in fashion design, I did so much drawing, and then as a fashion designer, I did no drawing. And as a costume designer, you do a little drawing. You know, a lot of people I study with have never drawn a thing in their life, which I think is really funny. But you do a lot of drawing in costume design as opposed to fashion design because everything is so, one day you're doing
Trying to
cowboys.
show your ideas.
Just trying to show your ideas. One
Okay.
day, yeah, you're doing cowboys. The next day you're doing something else. Everybody has a different idea. You need to be very clear about what words mean and trying to figure out, a common language is really difficult. The director could say cool, and that means one thing. I could say cool, and I'm talking about something totally different. So trying to find a common language is gets to be, is ripe for error. So having those drawing skills is vitally important. You can't make anything. When I was first starting, I definitely like sewed everything myself, but that is not sustainable. You just have too much to do, and you have to be on set all day. You can't, that means you would have to be up all night sewing for the next day, and you just can't do it. I definitely did that in the beginning, and I definitely, did not sleep for weeks, but you have to have a team that you trust, that you know how to communicate what you want made. And also you have to have a team that you trust that is sometimes making decisions for you in your absence. If you know the goals, sometimes they have to decide, okay, I think I'm gonna like pick this trim versus that trim, or like I'm gonna pick to make the hem this way versus this way based on what I know she likes or know she's interested in. Because you can't be around all the time to like decide every little thing. When I was at Banana, you would have to do these tech packs where I was drawing out a little a little flat, and I would say 1 by 1 rib, tubular, 1/8 of an inch with 1 strand of spandex. I mean, it was like down to the nitty gritty. In costume design, I'm like, I want her to look swishy. It's like sometimes it really comes down to that. And then I'm like, okay, make a thing. Here's my sketch. I want this. I really like the way this does this. Here's some research I like. And then you have to run away and go do something. And then you come back and you're like, swishier. Let's make it swishier. Throw some rhinestones on there. It's a little it's not that. I'm trying to be humorous.
Yeah.
But that's the feeling sometimes. Like sometimes I wish I could sit there and just make it myself so that I could get exactly what I want. But you have to learn how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's many aspects to this job. There's so many people. When I worked on Dickinson, we had 18 tailors in the shop. 18. There was a costume shop with 18 people. And then there were 6 houses outside of that all had teams of 20 something people that were just making clothes constantly. You can't talk to all those people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a lot. But yeah, you have to sketch and present your ideas.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was just kind of, what is something that, like, as a young designer, you wish you had known? Like something you know now, but you wish you had known then, that maybe would have.
Like as a costume designer or fashion designer, or
as a costume designer?
As a costume designer, I wish I had been a coordinator. I wish I started out as PAing and gone on to coordinating, because there's so much about budgeting and how like you can figure out how like the departments work together in a way that I still sometimes, my coordinator who will work beneath me, like they'll have more answers than I do. And I'm like, they want what now? They want the paperwork to do what? Sometimes you have to hide money. Sometimes you have to like put money in different sections because people don't understand tailoring. There was one costume designer on one show, very well known, very famous show. She won all kinds of awards. It was a beautiful costume design show. And the producers, I would say 2 or 3 years after the show closed, tried to sue her because it was so expensive. Because they just don't understand all the value that goes into. Now that's I'm scaring you guys. Don't like that was just like a one-off thing, and like that's not normal.
They might have been egregious.
yeah. But I will say that like people don't understand how clothes are made or that clothes are made. So like sometimes you just have to kind of make something look like something else. That is what I wish I knew. And then also, you really do have to carry a lot of bags, and it is very harmful to the body. And there are sometimes, especially when I used to work on commercials, you get casting in the day before. You have to do it all in a day. You have to costume 5 costumes in less than 24 hours. And sometimes you're standing in line at the H&M at Times Square at 11 o'clock at night, and you're thinking, why am I here? But that's rare, but it happens. You're carrying a lot of bags. Just know that. But it's really fun. I'm making it sound terrible, but it's really, really fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uhua, I have you next.
Hi. So
Fun.
my question is that what
I
is the
love seeing your
biggest
guys' faces. Anyway, sorry, go
thanks.
ahead.
No. So like what is the biggest challenge that you have to deal with when you're doing the costume design? Like the budgeting side, or was it like what kind of
Budgeting,
stuff?
I have to tell you, budgeting is hard. You know, achieving all your brilliant ideas on $5 can be tough. So I would say that is a challenge, but it's also, if you look at it from the right perspective, it can be creative because you think, how can I do this for this short? And you get really creative ideas that way when you're under some constraints. If the world is your oyster, sometimes it's, I don't know, you don't get as creative that way. So that can be tough. I think it's just the time. But you know, I have to say this is an advantage of COVID, is that everybody is appreciating how much slower things are now. Um, People are like, oh, I guess we have to give you more time. And all of us are like, yes, yes, we need COVID. We need 3 more weeks to do this. So we're kind of like trying to, you know, look on the bright side of COVID. But I would say doing it, you know, in the past, you would get casting the day before, two days before, 3 days before. So the time constraints can be hard. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Violetta, you're next.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for being here today. This is exciting.
Yeah, no problem.
So costume design for you is mostly like in movie commercials and like shows, right? So like New York is really famous for Broadway and stuff like that. Would Broadway be its own sense of costume design, or is it still all encompassing within the same venture, I guess?
That's a great question. I saw that Sarah Tassetti is coming later, so I think she can speak a lot to the theatrical aspect of things. I know her. I would say, truthfully, we all, you know, anyone who went to a graduate program, you study theater more. So I've definitely studied it. The work is different. The work is very different in theater versus film, because when you're doing theater, Broadway, or regional theater or small theater, you're designing something 6 months out, and then you kind of make it, and then you put it on stage, and you have this whole process where you get to watch it every night. You watch it every night, and then you get to play with it and tweak it and kind of lovingly craft it. Everyone talks together. People put lights on it, and all of a sudden colors disappear, and then you get to sort of switch things up. You really get to craft this like beautiful art piece in theater. And in film, it's a little bit like, it can be so fast that you just have to trust your gut and make choices and throw it up on the screen and hope it turns out okay. And that's where experience comes in, which is why I cannot stress enough that like just do stuff to get experience. You know, doing small student films is a great way to just get rolling. Although I have to say, different than when I started, everybody has a phone now, so I think there's a certain aspect of like media production that everyone has a little bit of an insight to that we didn't have even 10 years ago. But with regards to theater, you get to just like craft it a little bit more, and film, it's just really fast. But but you still have to bring the same to it.
Okay. So would you say like in Broadway it's like a little bit more like personal in the sense they actually like handcraft it themselves compared to where in movie it's a little bit more like buying pieces and then supplementing what you can make on your own?
Um, I think that's true. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, if you're doing a contemporary Broadway piece, you're buying it. You know, if you're doing a Broadway piece about, you know, a man in a house in 2019, like you're gonna go buy him a shirt. You're not gonna make that shirt. But if you're doing period pieces, you have to build them all, and you can't rent them because they have to perform every night, and so they need to stay there every day and get holes ripped in them. So you have to make them again and again and again. So that's a whole different build process. You have to budget it out to costume shops, and then there's costume shops that sort of are the makers of those costumes. I mean, like if you look at I'm trying to think. There's one costume house that still makes the costumes for Phantom of the Opera every year. They have all the original, we call them costume Bibles, of how stuff was made when the first year Phantom of the Opera came out. And every year they make a new round of costumes because they get worn out. And they still make them according to the original set of design, brief, and instructions. And so it's a little bit of a different thing in that way.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. And our last question for today is Mary Kate.
Hi, you had mentioned before that like when you go out and buy like pieces for the productions and everything, is that done by you and like the costume designer, or is like a specific person hired to run out and do like that buying of the pre-made pieces, or would you send like an assistant out to do that?
It depends on the size of the production, and it depends on the designer. There is, I'm trying to think if it's Jen Rogaine, but also I know that Ana Lucia, who designs Pose right now, my friend, my dear best friend Kristen, is the shopper on Pose right now. Like, there is a shopper position on every major television show and film, so you have to run out and shop, but so you have to have somebody to go out because the costume designer can't do that. But if you happen to be a designer that likes to be in the store and look at things and put things together, then they figure out a way to make time to go out and do it. But you're not doing all the shopping yourself. If you are just sort of getting started and doing something smaller and indie, then you're doing it yourself.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Maria, this was wonderful. Thank you
Good.
so much
I'm
for
so
coming on. And yeah, we really appreciate hearing everything that you had to say.
Well, thanks so much, guys. It's really nice talking to you. And it was really, it was a big journey for me to go from fashion to costume. So I hope I've given you a little bit of insight and help you learn about all the different ways. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your pandemic fall.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Students,
Bye.
I'm putting up the attendance question now, which is, what did you learn today about costume design that surprised you? You can send me an email as soon as you're able. I will check it out soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, Professor. Thank you.
Professor, I have a quick
Yes.
question.
Sure.
So when you said you wanted us to send you an email with the question, do you want us to keep sending it within the same email we always like send you our question to? Or is it okay?
Ideally, it would be a different email every week with the
Oh,
question.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's how I interpret it. So I was like, okay, wait, I don't know if I'm doing this.
No. I go through the attendance questions first, and then I circle back to lecture prep, and I might miss your lecture prep if it's in the same chain. So.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Okay.